maybe then we'll talk in big strokes real quick about how technologies evolved. So we came across about this by like this pre-digital era where we stored things like on paper and put them in file folders and then stored them somewhere in our office. And that in a way is a pretty good security technology, because if some nefarious actor actually wanted to do something with that particular information, well, they have to find out where that information resides locally, then break into that house, break into that drawer and find that particular document, take it or make a copy, and then do something nefarious from it. And so actually that makes surprisingly a really good metaphor what we need to be developing. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. So then what happened though is we invented database solutions. And so most of commercial activity was then in some shape or form facilitated using digital entries. But that was actually, and most people will know that, in the early 60s, but then ultimately we started connecting these databases to network technologies, including the internet itself. And that's a big problem. That is a huge problem, because databases were not inherently designed to be secure and part of networks. And that's why we saw all of these externalities earlier, that there's a data breach basically every hour in the United States and probably around the world. So this is a simplified graphic of how we see at the moment the Web3 stack. Needless to say, it's always evolving. So the bottom layer is the internet or Web 1.0 layer. So your TCP IP protocol, HTTP, SMTP, voice over IP. And so also what that should make obvious, that blockchains aren't protocols, or then there are not protocols in the narrow technical sense. They are the protocols in the business logic sense, because they're also making use of protocols. And so then the point of this graphic is mostly to show there's all these different middleware solutions and addressing solutions, etc., that people are working on, teams are working on around the world, but they're very nascent at the moment, right? So right now, all of these functions are centralized functions, and you probably saw that Facebook at the beginning of the month, we're in October right now, went down for a couple of hours because of a particular DNS issue, and Facebook, WhatsApp, and other services at the Instagram and so forth were completely down, because it's a centralized solution that if it, for whatever reason, is no longer reachable, will take down all these services immediately. And that's why also, if you analyze other blockchains, and like Solana was DDoSed not so long ago, you realize, okay, if that's possible, that means a number of things, including the fact that they are not decentralized and at this point in time. And for me, that also means that they are not a blockchain as of yet. Then what we invest in, so a lot of these companies are part of our portfolio for full disclosure, like Keyless and Mint-based EtherRisk and so forth, all part of our portfolio. But these are necessarily on and off-chain services in order to interact with blockchain-based solutions. And then the obvious one, and we'll talk a little bit more about this particular level. Right now, we have kind of these very cumbersome browsers and what people call wallets like MetaMask that store things like digital assets. But at the moment, what we don't store much, there's lots of attempts. We looked at dozens of those. There's not much storing of credentials in a very useful fashion that would be able to interact with real-world economic activity at scale. It's very nascent. And then ultimately, though, all of these solutions and middleware will be used by users through applications. So that's why it's very unfortunate that we still hear battle cries such as blockchain adoption, cryptocurrency adoption. That's a little bit like saying voice over IP adoption. People didn't adopt voice over IP. Developers adopted voice over IP, and then users at large adopted things like Skype and WhatsApp to make use of that. And that's why also, like from an investor's perspective, you might have heard of thesis like the Fed protocol thesis, where value accrues to the network layer. I mean, that's a little bit like saying the value of SMTP accrue to SMTP and not to the email client. So that has historically not be true, and I don't have any expectation that this will be true in the long run. As I said, it's kind of an intermittent layer that will eventually abstract it away if we want indeed to see adoption of that technology by the population at large.